Welcome to the Your Leadership Legacy podcast. My name is Tina Paulus-Krause, and I'm so excited to bring you this next podcast dedicated to you high performers out there who want to reinvent yourself, reinvent your business, maybe your career, all of it. This podcast is all about being dedicated to transformation and being the best possible leader of yourself and others that you can be in order to create a legacy that lives on. Welcome to Your Leadership Legacy. My name is Tina Paulus-Krause. I am the founder and CEO of True You Teams. And here we go. Hey everyone, welcome to this episode of Your Leadership Legacy. My name is Tina Paulus-Krause, and I have Lisa Kalmin on the show today. Hey Lisa.
Hi, I'm so glad to be here finally. Woo-hoo.
I know, finally is so right. I have literally, we just talked about this before we started. I wanted to have you on the show probably since like episode number 1 or 2,
Oh my gosh,
because
right.
you were a huge inspiration for me starting the show. And we'll get into that and kind of
Oh,
start talking about that as we go. But what I want to do is start off with you introducing yourself and giving everyone a little bit of a background on who Lisa Kalmin is.
Great. Well, thank you. Thank you. My name is Lisa Kalmin. I am a transformational trainer, coach. I call myself a mindset wizard. I have literally been in the personal development, transformational, coaching and training industry for almost 38 years. So it's 37 and a half years. And I'm a Texan by birth, although now I live in California and I've become a Southern Californian, which I love. And I have, I think one of the most interesting things about me is at the age of 51, I had twin boys. I didn't have them like physically birth them, but I have them. So they're now 14, which is a whole nother level of personal development. Let me just say.
It really is, yeah.
Yeah, I was gonna say there was nothing that prepared me for parenthood. I mean, transformation has been great for that, but still not the prepare. There's nothing to prepare. Not a
Right.
thing.
I love this because I was on the other end of the spectrum. I had Courtney when I was 20 years old.
Oh
And
my gosh.
I would say it was like a baby having a baby, right? Like I
Right,
didn't,
right.
you learn through it all. So talk to us about 51 years old and all of a sudden you've got these babies and how
Yeah,
it was different because you went through transformation.
yeah, that's great. That's great. Also, I'm the author of the book, The Problem is How You See the Problem, which was helpful. And when I had the kids, uh,
Yeah.
I think one of the key distinctions of um, transformation and personal development and leadership is commitment, operating out of your vision, operating out of your commitment, not your circumstances, your feelings, your current conditions. And so even when the boys were babies and they wouldn't be sleeping through the night, they'd get up at different times and need to be fed at different times. And I'd get up and, I'd go to training. This was when everything was in person. So I'd be driving for 45 minutes or whatever it was. I'd come home late at night and I literally would have to stick my head out the window to keep myself awake driving because the crazy hours. But that was what it was to be committed. So that's been really helpful. And then I think one of the other key distinctions of transformation is responsibility and personal responsibility. And so especially as they become teenagers and there's a lot more pushback and frustration and things like that, I really get to look at how am I being, how have I been, what's been my impact on that and how's that a reflection back to me? And I know they're hormonal and this is part of it. And I know the developmental pieces of this,
Yeah.
but it also is always let me say it the way you'll get it. I'm constantly getting feedback.
Yeah. Yes.
Constantly getting feedback.
Yes. Go a little deeper in that. What do you mean by what do you mean by that?
Feedback, when most people hear feedback, they hear some kind of criticism or critique.
Mhm.
And sometimes it does feel that way for sure. Feedback is literally just information coming back to you. Like if you think a stereo system that's giving you feedback, it's just information coming back to you. So in an organization or in a team or, if we're doing it right in our family, the feedback is really here's what I'm feeling or here's what I'm experiencing or here's what I'm noticing. And then it gives that person information and feedback can be, hey, this is great. This is working really well. Like I would say
Yeah.
to people who are coaches, entrepreneurs, people, the executives, people who have teams, give a lot of feedback about what's working. Here's what's working, and because workability means I want to keep it. And then when you give feedback about what's not working, which isn't about a critique of who the person is, it's just about how their behavior or their particular attitude is impacting the organization, then they can get it, they can feel it, they're willing to be open to it. And then, what's working, you want to keep, what's not working, you want to let go of. And then what's good, what do you want to bring? What's in the gap, or what do you want to add to it? What's the missing?
I'd love to go deeper on the feedback, because you taught me feedback is neutral. Because feedback has been neutral for me, right? So
Right.
I want you to talk a little bit about how does somebody really get to that place where that feedback is something that they can take and change, versus like keeping it in and getting rubbed up against it and all of that.
Sure. Well, two pieces to that. The first piece is that people who want feedback are people who are committed to excelling and growing and being extraordinary. So I've been watching the Olympics. I'm really all in on the Olympics. And
Love it.
at the beginning, Peyton Manning was at the opening ceremonies. I don't know how he got there, but somehow he ended up talking about how much game film he watched of himself. He said, I watched the films I watched was of me because I knew that's how I would need to improve. And he's one of the best quarterbacks ever. And President Teddy Roosevelt, 100 and something years ago, used to read only the negative articles that were written about him. He wouldn't read positive newspaper articles because he knew that the negative stuff would give him feedback or information about how he could be better. So first, if you want to be Nordstrom's is always looking for feedback. I'm always interested in what companies send me a survey and what companies don't, I don't know what to do with it, but it is interesting. So if you want to be great, you want to get feedback from the people in your life, and especially in your career, et cetera. And then the second piece to that is if you have any leadership in your organization, or obviously your family, it's how you give feedback. How you give feedback. So I'll give you an example from my personal. One of my sons was, I have twin boys at 14. They don't always get along, as you might imagine. And so one of them was saying something that was about who my other son was. I'm like, look, you can be upset with his behavior. You can let him know that his behavior didn't feel good to you. You can't call him a name or say he's a certain way. Those are very different. So feedback's got to be about either how someone is presenting themselves, showing up, we would say, or qualities of their beingness, or what actions they took, not who they are, because that becomes shaming, and that's very toxic in any environment.
Yeah, I just think about teaching 14-year-old boys that and how incredible that is.
I'm not sure we've taught it yet, but we're working on it.
You're working on it. That's great. Yeah. So how you said what, 32 years, 30 some years, 38 years.
Yeah.
It's amazing that you've been doing this work. Talk a little bit about the big surprises along the way. Like, what's been your biggest, wow along the way?
Oh gosh, that's great. I think this is a little bit probably, I don't know if it'll make sense to anybody, but one of my biggest surprises is how I've let my vision lead me. Like I've followed it. Like I grew up in Houston. All my high school friends were there. I went to college with them. I had a corporate job. I have an MBA. I was working for an investment company. And I did this work, and it touched me powerfully, and I was, drawn to it. And I quit my job and did that. And then I moved to Florida, and then I moved to Washington, D.C. And then it was really interesting when I ended up in California. I needed to move where I was living. The lease I was in was up, and I was like, well, I could move here, I could move, and I had this opportunity in California where I could move across the city, or I could move across this country. So I just did. Yeah. So that was a surprise, because I don't think of myself as necessarily whimsical. at all. But those are moments where I've let my vision lead me. So I think that's been a really big.
Yeah. So talk about the opposite of that, because I don't think I get where you say, letting your vision lead you. What happens when people don't let their vision lead them?
Well, I think it's not always a bang on the head. Sometimes people have a illness or a tragic event in their life, and that's kind of a bang on the head.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's a whisper, and sometimes it's a feeling, and sometimes it's just this internal desire. And so I would say pay attention to those. Don't ignore those. And it doesn't mean you don't have questions and let's say in your marriage, you're like, you've been in there 15, 20 years and it's a little dull or whatever. It doesn't mean just leave. It means
Right.
take the actions to work on it. It means, if you want to have it be more extraordinary or connected or intimate or whatever, then figure that out. So
Right.
I think if we listen, God, if you have it as God, universe, if you have it as universe, however you have that, it gives us, there's signs. There's always signs.
What happens if I'm not listening to those signs, right? Or what if I don't have a vision? What if I'm listening to this and I'm like, I don't even know what my vision is?
Great. Well, I think everybody has a vision, but if you don't listen to the signs, I think ultimately a person would end up stifling their joy and their self-expression and it doesn't mean it's bad, but at the end of your life, we read all those articles about what are people's biggest regrets at the end of their life, and they're not like, well, I'm so glad I stuck to that job, and I'm so glad I, saved an extra $5,000 or $10,000 or whatever it was. It's all about relationship and experience. And so if somebody doesn't think they have a vision, I'm going to invite you to just give yourself, first of all, do some meditation, and I don't mean you have to like sit in a cave or something, but like give yourself like some still time and then let whatever be there. And there's plenty of great apps for that, etc. The other thing is do a vision board. Vision boards are great because the subconscious leads the way. And you can do it virtually online, or there's a million YouTubes about that. Or you could just get a poster and a bunch of magazines that you love and just cut out pictures you love. That's going to tell you what you're gravitating to unconsciously.
Yeah. Dream, right?
Dream.
What do you like really getting serious with what you want?
Or journal if you're a writer, just journal, just do all this with yourself and then give yourself permission to share.
It's beautiful. It's beautiful. I spent 22 years in corporate, climbing the ladder and doing all the things. And I think now when I think back on it, I just always thought, well, as a leader, if I need the development, they'll bring it to me, right? Like, I'm on this path, they'll just bring it to me. And that never happened. And when I would go and try and get that, it was about leadership development. And until I stepped in to transformation and stepped into a different way of learning and a different way of developing and moving and all of that, I didn't really understand it. And so I'd love for you to talk a little bit about the difference between leadership development versus transformation. Like, what is the difference between those two things?
Yeah, that's great. So I think leadership development focuses, and I was in corporate too, focuses on skills. It's skill-based, it's more formulaic, more formula, like that. Transformation is, if you just take the word transformation, trans and formation, it's going beyond the form. So if we think about as human beings, and there's plenty of research done on this, but somewhere between the ages of 0 to 8, max 10, usually 0 to 4, our belief system, our worldview is fairly formed. Okay, it can have some big shifts, but for most human beings, most of their developmental way of looking at the world is between 0 and 8. And so that's what any leader or anyone brings to the world, whether it's they're a hamburger server or a CEO of a multi-billion-dollar corporation. And transformation looks at that. So we look at what's the way I see the world? because that's influencing how I operate, how I connect with people, how I'm in relationship, what actions I take, what I see as possibility, what I see as not possibility, what's criticism, what's not, da, 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 da. And so transformation is about diving into that and discovering what are the beliefs, and I don't mean spiritual beliefs, I mean the set of assumptions we start to live out of. What are the beliefs that are serving me? What are aligned with what I want to be, what I want to do, who I want to become, et cetera, my goals, my dreams, and what are not. And we do that. And here's one other way I'd say leadership development differs from transformation. We do that by getting down and dirty and gritty. We get into your life, and not because we want to know your personal life. Like I've probably heard 500,000 personal stories, none of which I remember, not a one, because it's not my purpose. I'm not interested in that. I'm interested in you seeing what it is and breaking through. And I think leadership development, especially through corporations, is so strapped by HR and protocol and what they can and can't do. And some of that very appropriate. Look, we've had some toxic crap show up in corporations, especially around women. So that's why it's distinct. And so on the other side, what happens is you experience, like, you had all this knowledge, but who you were being was stifled by your history, by your past, and not on purpose. It's nobody's fault. It's just what happens. And so on the other side of this is people access ways of seeing the world and being, like accessing qualities of themselves that have been buried and are freed up about it. So I think, that's a pretty short answer to a long question.
No, it's beautiful. The reason I ask you that is because I literally remember face to face with you a couple of times. And, in my head, it was the people pleasing. She doesn't like me, but why is she, you know what I mean? Like, it's that disruption to how I had shown up my whole life. And and in the moment, it feels scary and all the things, but on the other side of it, like, you realize that you're standing for people. And I think that's what I didn't get in the moment. Right. And so for all the people that are out there listening to this that are in corporate and they're like, well, they'll bring me the development, know that there's other development out there. There's other ways out there to grow yourself and to move through that and to really get at the embodiment piece of it.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And if I could, just to launch what you said, I train men and women, and what you said about people pleasing, or if it's not, it's perfection or it's performance or whatever it is, one of the things that and maybe this is another surprise as I talk about it, that I'm so grateful for is how women particularly have embraced this work and utilized it to access who they are as an embodied leader. And my best friend and business partner, Lynn Sheridan, who you know well as a trainer, and she's also a marriage and family therapist. We've a few years ago, and what's fascinating is what's happening right now in our culture. But a few years ago, we kind of felt this vibe of, we've got to empower women. We've got to empower women to be their divine feminine leadership, not bitchy. We call it our badass series, but it's not about badass like bitchy. It's like owning your greatness and achieving results with more grace and ease and flow versus push and effort. Secondly, the intuitive nurturing and collaboration and holding the whole that women do. Like, that's what's wanted and needed on our planet. We have spent hundreds of years with a male dominated, maybe patriarchy, I don't know, but and this, one of my mentors, and her name is Lynn Twist, she's written some incredible books, talked about it this way. She said, look, for so many decades we've been flying with one arm, the male essence, and we're going in circles. But what would happen if we did this?
Powerful.
Yeah. So that's kind of, as you talked about, what was a wake-up call for you. I think that's the wake-up call, one of the wake-up calls I'm committed to on the planet,
Yeah. Because I wasn't used to having women stand for me, Lisa. Like,
Yeah.
that's really what it was. I didn't know what that looked like. And I certainly didn't know how to do it myself. You know what I
Mhm,
mean? And so the
mhm,
learning process through all of that and just the ability to have somebody stand for you so powerfully that it allows you to step into your power,
mhm.
the greatest work on it's
Yeah,
the
yeah,
greatest
yeah,
work on it,
yeah.
for
It's
sure,
good,
for
powerful
sure.
stuff. It really is.
Yeah,
Good. That's
yeah.
exciting.
So the name of the podcast, Your Leadership Legacy. Like
Yes.
I feel kind of silly even asking this because it feels pretty obvious, but what is the leadership legacy, Lisa, that you are intentional on leaving?
Well, it's really actually a good question because I think I get so busy in what I'm up to.
Yeah.
Uh, I think it's twofold. One, the leadership legacy I'm committed to leaving is that we awaken enough people on the planet to elevate our consciousness and to because I do believe when we are in our higher self, we work in harmony, we work together, we uplift rather than destroy. And I think it's pretty important right now. So part of my work and my trainings, my coaching is about touching as many people as possible that way. And then until I had kids, I don't know that I would have thought about the legacy that I have that I not just my own sons and their own who they become as young adults and citizens, but
Mhm.
also all of the generation, their generation, my grandkids' generation, 2 or 3 generations ahead, like as they look back, what's the world that we have been standing for them?
Yeah.
Because when I look back at my parents and grandparents who, you know, some of them came over from Europe and some were here, but ultimately their life was spent in order to make their world better or their children's world better. And
Mhm.
I think I'm not saying sacrifice ourselves for that. And I'm
Yeah,
saying we need to wake up to that. We're not
totally.
great.
Yeah. Well, when you say elevate consciousness, I mean, I've heard this saying recently that hurt people,
Yeah.
transform people. And when you transform yourself, you literally heal the 7 generations before you and the seven generations after you.
No, that's
And
good.
that's what I heard you saying, right? We're
Yeah,
healing
yeah, yeah.
generations. We're healing through ourself. We get to heal not only the generations that we have in our lives now, but future and past as well. So
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, that's,
You know,
that's huge.
we're either and whether you're in development of, leadership development or anything else, we're either impacting and adding value or we're taking value. There's no
Yeah.
neutral place to just stand here on the planet. You either are
Yeah.
adding value or you're taking value.
You're a giver or you're a taker. Like
Yeah, it
that's what
kind of
that
goes
reminds
back,
me of,
it
right?
goes back to that. Yeah.
Yeah. So what happens when you elevate consciousness? Like what happens in a world where we are all elevated and conscious?
Well, I don't know if it's all. I don't think we need all. I think I believe in the whole critical mass thing. It's supposedly the 4% of a population elevates. Um, and if you look at leaps in our world, whether it was a spiritual evolution or the Renaissance or something crazy was happening in Europe in the 20s because you had Tesla and you had I don't mean the car, I mean the person. Einstein, and you had a guy named Rudolf Steiner who developed the Waldorf schools and biodynamic farming and some things like that. There's a leap in consciousness. And so what happens is beyond that, and it's a little like the book The Tipping Point.
Mm.
Something happens and it immediately spreads through the culture. So my and look, I'm not attached to anybody's politics at all, and just go vote. Everybody go vote. Just vote. Wherever you want to vote, just vote. Do it.
Period.
Yeah. Um, but even this groundswell of energy around Kamala Harris, like her, don't like her, doesn't matter. Something wanted to happen. That she was just the mechanism. Like
Mhm.
something wanted to happen about women, about diversity, about this stuff. Now, the world's transforming whether we want it to or not. Like we're growing and expanding. The universe is ever expanding. We're growing and expanding, whether we're on board or not, whether we want to halt the brakes, it just isn't going to work out.
Right.
And so we might as well ride the wave. And so I can't remember how I started this, but my point about this, elevating consciousness, is when something wants to happen, it's going to happen. Somehow it's going to happen.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Talk about your book a little bit. So I know that you have a book out there, because what you're saying reminds me of your book. I think it probably leads right into it. So
Absolutely, absolutely. So my book is called The Problem is How You See the Problem. And it's such a great, quick story because I started the book 3 years before I published it. Now it's a really short book, everybody. It's like 112 pages or something.
Yeah.
And so I just kept getting, it wasn't that I didn't have anything to write. It was that what was going on in my head is, oh, this has already been out there. People have seen it. The problem was how I was seeing the problem. It was exactly my book title. So it's really a great foundational entry into transformational distinctions. Like for people like you who've done this work, it's a great reminder. It's a great little like handbook. For people who don't know anything about it, it's a great beginning because it's written in a way that people can use it. And so it's really some key distinctions about when you shift your perspective on something, everything changes. So that's really the point.
Yeah,
it's on Amazon. It's on Amazon. It's $10.
Yes, go get it. Go get it. Where else, Lisa, can people find you?
Yeah, my website, lisakalmin.com. I've got on there a little ebook if they want, that's different than my book, that the free downloadable ebook. Also, you can get in touch with me through Facebook or Instagram by my name. And as I said, my best friend and business partner, Lynn Sheridan, and I are doing a Badass Women's Leadership Retreat in person because we're like, there's some real value in connecting and being live with people in San Diego in October 4th through 6th. So, and that's all really about accessing your divine feminine and expanding your life in a way that is, talk about surprises. We're surprised by it, but it's been so great.
Yeah,
so
amazing. Yeah. Well, I want to thank you for everything that you do, for who you be,
thank
for
you.
Everything that you've done for me. I mean, like from a personal perspective, your coaching has literally altered my life, and I mean that in every way. So thank you so much for
How's
that.
Al?
Al is good. Al is really good. His health is good. And yes, he had his strokes during the middle of all of that. And he's retired now and living his best life in the best shape he's ever been. So it's all
good. I love that. Good. Love hearing that.
So it's been an honor to have you on the show. Thank you so much for everything that you do in the world. You're amazing.
Oh, thank you. I love you.
All right. All right, everyone. That's this episode of Your Leadership Legacy. Check us out next time. Bye.
Bye.
My name is Tina Paulus-Krause, and I thank you so much for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed the show. Check out our programs and events at trueyouteams.com. And until next time, make it an amazing day.